Hello everyone and welcome to Relative URLs with Templates. In this lecture, we will discuss how to use template tagging to create relative URL calls, and we'll also have a quick side discussion on future release of Django. Let's get started. As we mentioned so far, we have had to use an anchor tag with an href. We have usually passed in a hard-coded path to the file, meaning we either pass in the entire file path to actually get to the HTML file, or we write a file path to the actual view. So in general, this is poor practice if we want a Django project to work on any system and be scalable. We want to really focus on relative file paths, not hard-coded ones. Okay, and this lecture and the next one will show you how to use various methods to pass relative URLs with template tags. And at the end, we are going to show you the preferred method that will be the main method used when future versions of Django are released. Let's talk about for a second. A quick side note on Django and future release since we are going to be focusing that on the end of this lecture. Django in general has a really good roadmap for future releases and every 2 years they releases that is known as an IDS or a long-term support version of Django with support guaranteed of at least 3 years. Now, for a lot of people who work at enterprise companies, long-term support usually means something like 10 years, not just 3 years. But please keep in mind that Django is an open source project. It's really just a bunch of volunteers donating their time. So 3 years is a pretty long time support for such an open source project, but definitely check out the release notes and documentation on roadmaps for Django to get better idea and a better understanding of what the future of Django really looks like. And as a quick note, usually new releases involves better features and easier methods. They are not huge paradigm shifts in the way you actually work with Django and the views and the models, the templates, etc. So think of it more as improvements in regards to what you can expect in future release of Django. Don't be nervous or worried that all the knowledge you are learning right now is suddenly going to vanish with the next release. It really usually does not work that way. Okay, so back to the topic at hand. We how we can replace the hard-coded URL path in a href with a URL template instead. So let's see few example. Okay, all right. So we can easily fix that problem with the use of URLs in our template. So for example, usually you may have something that looks like that first darker example where you have a basic reference app slash thank you and then thanks. So that's just the anchor tag itself. If you want to use template tag, you can change that to look like this. You have the template tag with the percent sign. You have the keyword URL inside of that, and then in usually single quotes you have the actual name where you have the name equal to thank you in the urls.py of your application. That's one way to do this. And you could also just directly reference the view itself. So for example, in the previous method, we were referencing the name in the URLs by file, but you could also do this if you have an href and anchor tag like basic app slash thank you. You could just change that to be in a URL template tag in single quotes that says basic app dot views thank you, and that will go to the basic app, find the view for thank you and then return that link so that when you click on thanks or whatever that text and the anchor tag happens to be on your web page, it will take you to that view. However, at this method is actually eventually going to go away with Django 2.0 in the future. And this point in time at the recording of this lecture, right now the latest release Django 1.10, the next one is going to be 1.11, and after that we will should see Django 2.0, Django 3.0, 4.0. That's about 1.5 2 years away from being released at this point of time. But let's focus on how we can actually future proof our methods in that method is going to work right now. And in fact, I believe it's the better and simpler method to understand. So the suggested and most future-proof method is to do all of this with the urls.py file. So inside the urls.py file, you add in the variable app underscore name, that is important. You then set this variable equal to string, that is same name as your application name. Okay, so this is currently the best way to use URL mapping. The most future-proof example, and I believe the simplest example of the way to use this looks like this. You are going to be changing something that looks like a ref equal to basic app slash thank you. To change look like this, your URL template tagging and then includes the name of your application colon and then the name of that view. And remember that this method requires the app name variable to be created inside the urls.py file. Now, one quick note, so far we have really only been working with a single application Django project, and so you might be thinking, what's the whole point of all this? You are all template tagging since it's quite obvious to me that view matches with what application. I only have one application. It should be simple enough, and I don't have to worry about the relative URL about py file, Python file. Well, later on, especially if the colon project clone in case of clone project, actually we are going to be building out multi-application Django project. So a project, single project with multi applications, and I have things separated as applications. And with this short of methodologies, the URL template tagging becomes really important and really helps you have a clear understanding and clear pathways to your relative URLs links. So keep in mind everything we are talking about. Here is a kind of overskill for a single application project, but in the real world we are going to have multi-application projects. So that's where this really comes in. And this latest Django you can check by doing the chat GPT this method. Okay.